Hello everyone and welcome to another video here on the channel. Today I'm going to go through the 2025 AFL trade/free agency recap video. Going to go through each club one by one, all their ins, all their outs, and a grading out of 10. Please subscribe to the video if you haven't already, or to this video. Please like this video if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. So how this video will work, every day I've done a day-by-day recap of the day's proceedings. So if you want to check out my thoughts on last night's proceedings, go and check out that video. I would really appreciate it. This is a club-by-club, full club recap. So your ins, your outs, my overall rankings out of 10 for your club. So please subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on the bell for all notifications and share this video around. And if you haven't liked this video and you're watching this, please do so. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed as well, because I don't know why you're watching if you haven't subscribed. Come on, please and thank you. Right. So let's start off with the Adelaide Crows. We'll go in alphabetical order. So the Crows brought in Finbar Maley, lost no one. The Crows traded their future 4th round selection in the Maley trade, but have all your 2027 selections. So they head into this year's draft currently with pick 16, 48, 55, 64, 73, 75, 93, and 111. Now, obviously, some of those back-end picks won't end up being that high. They'll end up being in the 60s range when, clubs pass and trades like that, academy points get chewed up, etc., etc. Now, for the Crows, they did basically nothing. They failed to bring in Calamar Chi. So that's not a good thing. Now, however, their arch rivals Brisbane, who had the player, are now going to get him for nothing. So in a way, I thought about this long and hard, and I thought, you know what? Okay, now Adelaide won't have to pay anything for Calamar Chi through the preseason draft, but because they finished high on the ladder, for Adelaide and someone like that can be a pain in the ass, their arch rivals, and swoop on in the preseason draft. As long as you've got the money and the spot to do so, you can do so. But out of 10, I'll give the Adelaide Crows a grading out of 10. I'll give them a 3 because they didn't get the deal done. It's plain and simple. They've got some more key forward depth, which they don't really need, but they've done that nonetheless. Maley comes in on a 1-year deal. Tex is there next year. They did nothing. They failed to get Archie done, but now they're getting for free because Brisbane wouldn't pay up. Now, funnily enough, speaking of the Brisbane Lions, now they had a really good trade period, but this Archie one has probably stuffed their rating up. I'm going to tell you that right now. So the Brisbane Lions, they brought in Oscar Allen as a free agent and Sam Draper as a free agent. So they paid absolutely nothing to get those guys across. They lost Brandon Starcevich as a free agent, funnily enough, as well to the Eagles. They did acquire a 3rd round selection in the future in 2026, which was tied to Melbourne. They head into this year's draft to pick 17, 23, 44, 51, 59, 68, 79, 97, 115. Now, they've got academy players, Dan Annable, and there's another one as well on the top end. So they'll need points to match those players, which they'll use these for, which is why they should have accepted a future 2nd or a 2nd round pick for Calamar Chi, and now they'll lose him for nothing. Now, my grading for the Brisbane Lions would have been really high. It would have been as far as an 8 or 9. But now I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10, purely because they've absolutely butchered the Calamar Chi situation. Now they'll lose a guy who could have got for a pick around the 20s, now for nothing. So they failed Calamar Chi. They failed in that department. Everyone else they got for free, not financially, of course, but through free agency moves. So they retained a good draft hand. They could have had an even better draft hand had they traded Calamar Chi. Now, the reason they didn't trade him, the reason they didn't use it as a free agency move is it would have diluted the Sam Draper compensation for Essendon. And what they got for Oscar Allen. What they got for Brent Starcevich. They brought in the other two. What they got for Starcevich ended up going through a trade as well. So that's why it went how it went. Brisbane should have just accepted the move and moved on. But they have no power there. Brisbane thought they did, and they failed that. So 5 out of 10 for me. It would have been a 7 or 8 out of 10, maybe even a 9. Carlton. Now, they had a really indifferent trade period. They had brought in Ben Ainsworth and Will Hayward, which I'm really happy in terms of I'd be really excited from a Carlton fan bringing in Will Hayward, Ben Ainsworth and Ollie Florent. And they brought in some ruck support in Liam Reedy and Campbell Chester from the Eagles, a young player who was a former first-round draft pick. They lost TDK to the Saints as a free agent, Jack Silvani to the Saints as a free agent, Charlie Curnow to the Swans, and Corey Durden to Port Adelaide. They did land 3 first-round picks, though, for Charlie Curnow. They have Sydney's future first, their future 27 first, but they now no longer have a 26 or 27 future second-round selection. They also parted ways with a 2026 third-round selection. So they go into this year's draft. We pick 9, 11, 43, 54, 67, 72, 87, 105. So at the time, it was 9 and 19, but they end up getting rid of 19 to the combo picks. Did a trade with Hawthorn as well. So it's really, really hard to grade Carlton. I really like what they got for Charlie Curnow. I really like the inclusions of Will Hayward, Ben Ainsworth, and Ollie Florent in particular. But they lost Charlie Curnow, and TDK and Silvani, but 2 of those were as free agents, so it was out of their control. Charlie Curnow wanted to leave. They got maximum value for Charlie Curnow. So in a way, they didn't do too bad. And I really rate the selection of Will Hayward. I want to stress enough how damn good he will be for them and how much Sydney will miss Will Hayward in their forward line. So I'm finding this really hard to grade Carlton out of 10. They did, however, lose some big names, and they brought some solid names in. So for me, for Carlton out of 10, I'll give them a 6. Ainsworth and Hayward, Florent, I like, as I said, in the deal for Curnow, which was great. But losing TDK and Jack Silvani will severely hurt them in the ruck department and key defensive depth options. And Curnow out is a massive out and more pressure on Harry Mackay. And they don't really have any other good tall forwards really either. So Ainsworth and Hayward are the medium size to smaller size, and Florent's a winger, halfback. So a 6 out of 10 for the Blues. It would have been disastrous had they not brought in Hayward or Ben Ainsworth. I tell you that right now. It's still not great, but solid now. Collingwood, they brought in Jack Buller from the Swans, which is good for them. They lost Brody Myercheck. They gave up a future third-round selection as part of the Jack Buller trade, but they did receive a future fourth-round selection in return as part of the deal. For me, it's plain and simple. The Pies get a 3 out of 10. Now, they looked at Clayton Oliver. They looked at Bailey Humphrey. They looked at Jai Simpkin. They couldn't get any of those deals over the line. Not through their fault, though, sometimes, I guess. But Jack Buller provides a key forward, defensive option, or not defensive, but attacking option, to the club. He's not going to be a game changer. He might help them structurally with some more tall players up in the forward line, replacing Myercheck. Myercheck's got the runs on the board. They need to go younger. Buller's only like 21. So, I mean, I see why they did it. I have nothing wrong with them making the move, but overall, they didn't change anything, basically. So, for me, the Pies get a 3 out of 10. Now, Essendon, they're a really, really hard team to grade here. They stuck to their gun. Zach Merritt, who is going nowhere, and will be a bomber in 2026 and beyond. However, they acquired Braden Fiorini through a trade from the Gold Coast Suns as a winger inside mid. They lost Sam Draper due to to free agency compensation, which is why they didn't get Fiorini as a free agent. I gave up a future third with Fiorini to get Fiorini, so it didn't dilute the Draper compensation because I said they hold a full draft hand in 2027 for now. So they go into this year's draft test and we pick 5, 6, 21, 27, 30, 83, and 101. So really, for losing Draper, they got picked 21 in the end, which I think is a good pick for them. Draper's injury prone. He's out with an Achilles injury at the moment. So, I mean, I don't see how they did bad here. They stuck to their gun with Zach Merritt and said, you are not going anywhere. Now, the question would be, had they lost Zach Merritt, they would have had a lot more good draft hands. But they already got a good draft hand. And you don't want to go with too many top draft picks in one hit. Could hurt the rebuild stage and everything like that. But let's be real, Essendon are in a rebuilding stage. Zach Merritt won't be in their next premiership. So should they have let him go for pick 10, 22, future first, etc., Henry Huswaite? Look, it's a hard one to grade here. You know what? For them sticking to their guns, I'm really happy they stuck to their guns. So I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. Now, the draft hand, 10, 22, and a future first. If Hawthorn finish in the top 4, pick 10 will be like 15. 22 will be like 27. So it's like 12, 27, and a future first. If Hawthorn finish top 4, they'll be around 18. So really, Zach Merritt's value is better than Hustwaite's a fringe player. Now, however, had this been Cam McKenzie with those draft hands, and Essendon didn't take that, then I would have said it's stupid. But they had to improve the player. Hustwaite is fine, but not good enough for this deal in what they wanted. So I'm on Essendon's side here for sticking to their guns, but he is going to be severely awkward. They said from day one they would not trade him. Clearly they were open to if the offer was right. Now, however, they apparently asked for 4 first-round draft picks, which is completely delusional if I hadn't seen it. But what Hawthorn had offered, which would have been 3 of the first-round picks, well, they're not really 3, because 22 is not a first-round draft pick. 10, 22, and a future first, as I said, you bump them 5 selections back. If Hawthorn finish top 4, they're late to early second draft selections, late first to early second draft selections. And really, if Hawthorn had found a way to get a top 5 to 10 selection in, I think they would have got it done. But Hawthorn didn't make any effort to do so, so they failed. Zach Merritt. So Essendon get a 6 out of 10. Freo, they got Judd McVie into the club from Melbourne. They did that. So that's really all they did. They lost fringe players Will Brodie and Liam Reedy. They keep all their future selections in 2026 and 2027. Their current draft hand will be pick 20, 47, 69, 90, 103, 108. Bit of whatever for Freo. Got McVie, who's better than their 2 fringe players. They're looking at Harry Boyd as a ruck depth option to replace Reedy. That's not official and a long way from being official. But for Freo, give them a 3 out of 10. They got McVie, but they've done nothing else. But did they need to do much else? Maybe not. But from the trade period alone, they did absolutely nothing significant. So they get a 3 out of 10. Geelong. Said this last night. You talked a big game of Rowan Marshall and Charlie Curnow. You failed to deliver on acquiring either of those 2 great players, and you failed them. Geelong acquired James Warple as a free agent. They lost Patrick Reshko to Richmond, a young player in his first year. They held all their future draft selections to go into this year's draft with 19, 40, 60, 78, 96, 99, 114. Geelong failed Rowan Marshall and Charlie Curnow. You got Rowan Marshall in particular to publicly nominate your club to go to, and you failed. You talk a big game. I hear Geelong fans complaining and moaning, why would you want a disgruntled player at your club? Number one, he's contracted. He's one of the best rucks in the comp, Rowan Marshall, so why would we want to let him go? Yeah, TDK's come on board, but that's none of your business. We've actually got A-grade ruckman. Well, you've got a ruckman who should be delisted. And so much so, you really think much of your ruck, Reece Stanley, when you sub him out in the grand final in the 3rd quarter when the game's on the line, and you've subbed him out during the year, you've dropped him during the year, you played blick subs as your ruck. Whose fault's that? Not ours, yours. You failed on Rowan Marshall. Now, I had Geelong fans come at me going, typical St Kilda on the Len players go. I'm sorry. Aren't you the same club that did the same thing to Tim Kelly, who had personal reasons to go back to Perth for family reasons back home? You're the one that held him to his contract. You are the last club to tell anybody else about holding players to their contracts. Rowe was looking at going for better opportunity as the number 1 ruck. Tim Kelly had personal reasons, and you didn't let him go because you're a pathetic football club. That's why. Difference here. Personal reasons, interested in. Massive difference. Tim Kelly, the poor guy, was going through personal situations, and you didn't let him go. And you want to have a go at us, St Kilda, for not letting Rowan Marshall go? Get stuffed. You think you can get players on the cheap. You got Jack Bowes for pick 7 to your club, and they paid a big portion of his salary to bring him across. cheats. You tried getting Bailey Smith for cheap, and you got him for pick 18. Bailey Smith is clearly worth more than that. Your club is the last club to tell people about them other clubs being bitchy and holding players to their contract. When you do the same thing, and at least when we give players away, we don't ask for the world and unrealistic numbers. Geelong are a club that is hypocritical. They love to get A-grade players for cheap, but not willing to pay up. You get a player to commit to your club, and you let him down. Now, Geelong is saying, oh, we feel bad for Rowe. We did everything for Rowe. No, you didn't. You did nothing for Rowan Marshall. You embarrassed him, and we will welcome him with open arms as Rowe's a great man he is. His manager, Dave Trotter, spoke on radio before and said that we're happy to keep Rowe at the Saints. We're happy he's still there. He's happy to stay and be done with it. See, he's not angry at St Kilda. He was always happy to stay at the Saints. He just had a preference to go to Geelong to be the number one ruck. But he's happy to work it out with TDK. As I said all along, and plus Geelong failed Rowan Marshall. You simply failed him. Maybe if you put a good offer to the Saints, we might have accepted it. Pick 19, which ended up being 25 in a future second. Then apparently there was another offer that was in the 40s and a future second pick. Get stuffed, Geelong. You are completely delusional. You want players, you want clubs, or you want players from other clubs to pay the world to have them come across to them, but you won't pay it the other way around. Hypocritical football club of the Geelong Football Club. You failed the trade period. You failed Rowan Marshall and Charlie Curnow. Sucked in. Now, how's it feel to get treated how you treat other clubs? Not so great, is it now? And at least when other clubs let players go in good faith, they do the respectful thing. Geelong don't do things well. They do things dodgy, dirty, and it didn't work, so sucked in. I'm glad the Saints didn't cave in. I'm so proud of my club for sticking to their guns and saying, you ain't getting him for nothing. You pay up or you get nothing. And you got nothing because you don't deserve a quality player like Rowan Marshall. Have fun with Reece Stanley and no other rucks on your list, because that's what cost you a grand final, and sucked in, you won't win it again. Sucked in. So Geelong, they get a 0 out of 10 for failing to deliver for Marshall and Curnow. You got Warple. Yeah, have fun having him butcher the ball 9 times out of 10. Hawthorn were happy to let him go. Now, Gold Coast. They had a really interesting trade period. They brought in Christian Petrarca for heaps. 3 first-rounders, but they got 3 second-rounders back in that deal. They got Jamari Ugle-Hagan on the cheap, a former number 1 draft pick. If he can get back to being professional, and play every week, it'd be a great acquisition for them if he can play to the form that he's shown in the past. But they've got to be careful here. They got 2 good players in, one A-grader in Petrarca and a future player in Ugle-Hagan. But they lost Ben Ainsworth, Sam Flanders, Fiorini, Butterick, and Malcolm Roses Jr. They've got to be careful. Flanders and Ainsworth in particular are massive blows. They are best 23 players. They are vital parts of their team. So they really hope Petrarca can deliver, because now their depth is going to get tested. They lost a lot of their depth players in Butterick and Fiorini and Malcolm Roses Jr. So they're going to be careful here. So this has impacted my grading for them. They gave out their future first to Melbourne and their 3rd rounder in 2027, but they brought in Melbourne's 2nd rounder in the future, along with a future 3rd from Essendon. So their draft hand is pick 15, 18, 24, 28, 29, 36, 52, 92, and 110. In other words, Dylan Patterson and Zeke Hewland will be for those early selections through when a bid comes through. There are a lot of later picks in the 20s and 30s and 50s to match the bids for those players. So they're done really well. So for me, the Suns get a 5 out of 10. Got some good names, paid a lot to get them. They lost some good players like Flanders and Ainsworth. GWS, they brought in Clayton Oliver and lost Jacob Ware. I mean, clearly an upgrade right there. I wonder where the Giants will go in 2026. Not with Jacob, that's for sure. They only lost a future 3rd rounder for Oliver, which is great. They got him for nothing, and financially, Melbourne are paying over half the salary. So for the Giants, I don't see how they've done wrong here. They've done really, really well. They re-signed Leclerc for 2 years after St Kilda chose not to pursue him for reasons that people should understand. But people don't. They just like to bash St Kilda. But GWS done really well here. I mean, I give them a 7 out of 10. I mean, like, they got Clayton Oliver basically for free. And Melbourne are paying half the salary. And Jacob Ware's a fringe player. So I don't see how they've done bad out of this Giants. They've done so damn well. And they should be really happy with how they went. Hawthorn. Hawthorn did not bring in Zach Merritt. They embarrassed Zach Merritt through this whole time. So they brought in no one. Lost CJ Cheng with Giants Sarong and James Warple. They secured a third-round selection in the future, which is tied to Sydney, while giving up a future fourth to Sydney in the deal for Jai Sarong. They secured a fourth-round pick for next year for Melbourne from CJ. So their draft hand is 10, 22, 62, 76, 94, and 112. Hawthorn, like Geelong, failed Zach Merritt. So Hawthorn get a 0 out of 10. You lost 3 players. 2 of them are okay. But you failed to get Zach Merritt across. You saw how angry and fuming Tom Petroro was, the manager of Zach Merritt, because Hawthorn wouldn't pay up. Hawthorn, you got to understand, whenever an approach like you had, when you try and steal a club captain off someone, that you've actually got to bloody deliver. You embarrassed Zach Merritt through this entire process. Sam Mitchell talked a big game about how they were going to get Sam Mitchell. You had arrogant Hawthorn players like Ginnivan and Watson talking a big game, and Blake Hardwick yesterday on social media after the Merritt deal didn't go through, bagging Essendon. Well, gee, Blake, I'd worry about getting a kick at Hawthorn, mate, before you worry about how Essendon are going. Yeah, Essendon are not going to be good. They're going to be in the bottom 4 range. We knew that with or without Zach Merritt, okay? You worry about actually winning a final and actually earning a victory. Same goes for Ginnivan and Watson. Maybe stop staging for free kicks and actually worry about kicking goals. Yeah, Hawthorn actually might win more games and earn a win. You know, Hawthorn, the club, that talk a big game and they failed as well, just like Geelong. Funny that. So Hawthorn were shit. They went absolutely shit this trade period, beyond a joke, just like Geelong. So they are clearly also getting a 0 out of 10. Now their draft hand will be 10, 22, 62, 76, 94, and 112. But yeah, they still failed the trade period. They did a trade with Carlton, which meant nothing in the end. If they thought Hawthorn that is, that they thought that Essendon were going to accept that offer, they were kidding themselves. Now, Essendon asked for 4 future first-round picks, or 4 first-round picks, which is delusional, but I understand where they're coming from because 3 of those selections are late first, early second. So I understand that. Zach Merritt, you needed to bring in 2 top 10 draft picks, like what Melbourne did with Gold Coast and Petrarca. That would have got it done, but you didn't. So that's on the Hawthorn Football Club, and poor Zach Merritt is left embarrassed in this whole situation. So Hawthorn 0 out of 10. There is no other way you can twist it. And if you do, well, Jesus Christ. Now, Melbourne, they brought in Jack Steele, the Saints skipper, Max Heath from the Saints, Changworth Giant from the Hawks, and Brody Mychick from the Pies. They lost Judd McVie, Clayton Oliver, Christian Petrarca, and Charlie Spargo. Now, they received a future third-round selection for Clayton Oliver, while they sent St Kilda a future third-round pick for Jack Steele, future picks in the Gold Coast selection with Petrarca. They got a future second, and they gave up a future second and a future third in return. A third-round selection in the future went to Collingwood for Mychick, a future fourth-round selection for Max Heath, and a future third for Jack Steele at the Saints, also in the future. So confusing with all the future picks Melbourne got and lost. They head into this draft, Melbourne, pick 7, 8, 37, 66, 71, 84, and 102. So 7, 8, and 37 being the major picks here. They gained future first, so they'll have their own, and Gold Coast in the future years as well. But a bit indifferent for them still, like a club I mentioned earlier, like Carlton. They brought in Jack Steele and Brody Mike, who would be great additions to their side. But they did lose Oliver and Petrarca. So a bit of 50-50 for me. 7 and 8 will be great for them. Jack Steele they got for cheap. But for Clayton Oliver, they're paying over half his salary and got a future third. That's a big, big error on Melbourne's part, which is severely impacting their rating for me. So Melbourne get a 5 out of 10. They lost big names paying the salary of Oliver, but they gained Steele and Mychek. Now, however, had they not gained Jack Steele, this could have been like a 2 out of 10. So that's bumped it up because that kind of cancels out the Oliver bit because Steele's apparently being paid by St Kilda a little bit, nowhere near the amount Melbourne are paying for Oliver. So a bit indifferent for me. They did well on the Petrarca trade, and they did well on the Steele part. They did bad in the Oliver side, and Mychek is an older player. So 5 out of 10 for me. North Melbourne, did they even turn up this trade period? I don't know if they did, because they did absolutely nothing but bring in Charlie Spargo, and on the last day lose Finbar Maley. They added a future 4th round from Adelaide for Maley. Their draft hand 25, 26, 46, 57, 82, and 100. North Melbourne did bad this trade period because they did absolutely nothing. They need key defensive options. Lecalier was right there. They had to go at Jordan Butts. But they didn't do well because they got no one in that area. They're happy with their options. I'm sorry, besides Charlie Cobden, who else have you got that's good in that area? And he's injury prone. You had a perfect opportunity to get Lecalier and you said, nah, we're not doing it. There's other players you could have looked at and went, nah, we're not doing it. Not good enough. For me, for North Melbourne, they get a 1 out of 10. For doing nothing, yeah, they got Spargo, but he's also injury prone. You got no first round draft pick. For a club rebuilding, you need first round draft picks. You've got none. You got no good draft picks, and you did not go for Lecalier. 1 out of 10 for me for North. Port Adelaide, gee, they did pretty bad as well. They brought in three fringe players. Jacob Ware into the club. Corey Durden into the club. And Will Brodie. They lost no one yet. They'll lose Zach Butters next year, most likely. They added a future second-round selection tied to Carlton as part of the Corey Durden trade. And they retained all their picks this year or next year in 2027. So, look, people saying, look, they did all right out of the Corey Durden trade, which had draft picks go their way and all that, but they still didn't do too well overall. So, for me, what they did isn't exciting. They're a club that need to perform, and bringing in 3 fringe players will change absolutely nothing. So their draft hand is 49 and 85. So they got none. 3 fringe players come in, and you got no draft capital at all. Port Adelaide will not be playing finals in 2026. So my draft rating for them, or trade period rating for them, out of 10 is 1. 3 fringe players come in and a bad draft hand. Richmond, well, they did absolutely nothing as well until the last day or two. They brought in Patrick Reshko from Geelong, first-year utility. They lost Tyler Young, the key defensive option. He's 27, done an ACL last year. So basically they did nothing and gained nothing. They hold all their 2026 draft selections in 2027. They go into this year's draft to pick 3, 4, 38, and 81. So at least, unlike North, they've actually got top selections still. But they did nothing and they need to improve. So they're getting a 2 out of 10. Now the Saints, my Saints. We brought in TDK, Tom DeConing as a free agent, Jack Silvani from the Blues as a free agent, Sam Flanders for pick 7, and Liam Ryan for a future second. Lost Jack Steele, the skipper, the man of steel, and Max Heath, the Moose, both to Melbourne. Now, we parted ways with a future second-round selection, as I said, for Liam Ryan, but we got a future 2027, future third-round selection in return. And we got another future third-round selection in the 2027 draft for Jack Steele, and a 2027 future fourth-round selection for Max Heath. Now, the Saints are bringing in a lot of third and fourth-round selections in 2027, which tells me the Saints have got a lot of academy players in that year they got interest in. Otherwise, it doesn't make as much of sense now. It will over time, but not right now. Now, I'm really disappointed that we traded Jack Steele out for a future third-round selection, okay? That really hurts. It stings. Now, I've made a really heartfelt, emotional post for the great man Jack Steele, who's done so much for me, a wonderful guy, done things for me that you wouldn't expect an AFL player to do, like handing me at an event that I was at, that he was at, a cricket plaque milestone I had. He presented that to me, and it'll be a moment I'll never forget. Steely is never a guy. He's always a guy that would not just say g'day. I would say, hey, Coop, how you going, mate? And stuff like that. If I asked him to have a photo, yeah, of course, mate, no worries. That cricket thing, no worries. Even though I didn't ask him, that actually was a big surprise, and I really thank him for that. It means a lot. And then at one of the open training sessions in December, the Christmas one, I asked Steely if he can come off my YouTube channel just for a quick little chat. Absolutely, mate, no problem. He did it. Steely's a great man who will be missed at the Saints. Amanda Steele is a demon, but I will always respect Jack Steele. That will never, ever change. If you want more details, go and check out the post on Facebook and Insta. I would really appreciate it. But I don't see how people can say we failed the trade period. We actually won the trade period. We acquired TDK and Jack Silvani from a trade point of view for free. Sam Flanders for pick 7 and Liam Ryan for future second. So basically, we gained TDK, Flanders, Liam Ryan, and Jack Silvani for pick 7 and a future second. Tell me how we did not win the trade period. You cannot justify how. Now, our draft hand this year is pick 50, 65, 86, and 104. Yeah, no draft hand this year, but who's to say we can't trade them in during the draft for these future selections? You just never know what could happen. Flanders, Ryan, DeConing, Silvani, all best 22 players. Ryan had some sparks at the forward line. Flanders will play midfield and maybe half back as well. Silvani will be intercept defender to help Kel Wilkie. And TDK will help row in the ruck. So massive additions. Losing Jack Steele has impacted my grading from a 10 to a 9. Had they kept him, and if they had got rid of him, it had to be for a good selection, not that. But for me, the Saints get a 9 out of 10. Got the big names in. Got the big name in, or big names in, sorry. And, we really didn't lose them for much, besides Steele. So I'm really happy. Now, I understand the Lecalier thing. Like Ross said, can't please everyone. Carl Delina, the CEO, said the same. We brought in Silvani, and that kind of impacted the Lecalier side. We had more options in the defenders now. And when Silvani came in late, that impacted it. And GWS were asking for an unrealistic trade that St Kilda just couldn't do. Nothing to do with financial reasons. They could fit in a Lecalier if they really wanted to. But the deal was just unrealistic from the Giants. So it is what it is there. But 9 out of 10 for my Saints. The Swans, well, they brought a big name in Charlie Curnow. Malcolm Roses Jr. has some support in their small forwards, so they don't have any support there. And Jai Sarong, who can play all over the ground. They lost Will Hayward, Ollie Florin, and Jack Buller. Will Hayward and Ollie Florin a loss. Will Hayward in particular. They brought in Charlie Curnow, though, so that outweighs the losses. They gave up a future first in the next 3 drafts, so this year, next year, and the year after, for Charlie Curnow, as well as acquiring a future third-round selection for Sarong, future 4th in the Buller trade. But they have picked up 2 third-round selections next year, which are tied to Carlton and Collingwood, and a future 4th, which is tied to Hawthorn, and a future 2nd in 2027 that is tied to Carlton. So overall, they did pretty good. I'm giving them, or actually before I tell you my rating for them, they got pick 31, 32, 42, 63, and 88. They got a young draftee in Max King, and there is another guy in the Swans Academy, I believe, who will be around that top 20 range. They'll use those picks to pick those selections up, those players up with those selections. So, hey, Curnow, Max King, not the Saints one, the one in the draft, and another Academy player for Will Hayward, Ollie Florin, and Jack Buller, and some first-round selections. They clearly won. Saints won the trade period, but for me, out of 10, I'm going to give them an 8. only because losing Will Hayward's not an ideal situation, and that they paid a big price for Charlie Curnow, but they got it done. Unlike Geelong, Sydney know how to get deals done. West Coast, well, I think they did all right after losing Oscar Allen as a free agent, Campbell Chesser, who's been injury prone for most of his career, and Liam Ryan, who wanted to go to St Kilda halfway through the year. They gained a future second for Liam Ryan, which is around his value, so that's good for them. But they did lose their future third round selection to the Saints in 2027. But look, they're going with pick 1, 2, 13, 34, 41, 53, 58, 80, and 98. That's how you rebuild, by bringing in some good players like Brandon Starcevich and Tyler Young. In particular, Brandon Starcevich. I'm really, really excited for West Coast this year in 2026. Adding Starcevich, having pick 1, 2, 13, and 34. I mean, how could they do wrong with this? Willem Dersma and Cooper Duff, Tyler, potential number 1 and 2 draft. If they keep those selections, pick 13, they'll get a good player. Starcevich is a great addition, leadership experience, premiership player, 2-time premiership player, will lead their backline to the future for the next 8 years. Tyler Young, who's 27, a key defender. They don't have many options. Look, he's not the best name, but he's a name that could support Sandy Brock. Ruben Jimby can maybe play more midfield minutes now, or plays a different style of defender now instead of having to be a lockdown type. Because he's undersized, but he's done a bloody good job, Ruben Jimby. So for me, they lost Liam Ryan and Oscar Allen, but they kept a great draft hand, and they got Brandon Starcevich for free, essentially. So for me, the Eagles get a 7 out of 10. Now the Western Bulldogs, like Geelong and Hawthorn, they lost the trade period, like North as well. They brought in Connor Butterick from Gold Coast to play as a lockdown defender. Lost Jamal Ugle-Hagan for pick 74, which is not good. Nothing in or out of their futures. They go into this year's draft with pick 14, 33, 70, 74, 89, 107. They did absolutely nothing. They failed their club by not bringing in a key defender. Why did they not go for Lekalia? That's their problem, and why they won't do anything significant in 2026. My grading for the Western Bulldogs is a 1 out of 10. Like losing Jamal Ugle-Hagan for pick 74, adding no key defenders, should have went for Lekalia. I mean, they got no one to blame but themselves. So for me, St Kilda win the trade period along with the Sydney Swans and even the Eagles as well. And I'm glad that Essendon stuck to their guns with Zach Merritt. Thank you all for watching the AFL Trade Wrap. We've got more AFLW content to come, interviews, Gold King challenges, and the AFL Draft is just right around the corner in November. We have a lot of coverage with that coming soon as well. Thank you very much. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please follow my Instagram page, Facebook page as well. Would really, really appreciate it. Share this video around and like the video. Thank you. Go Saints.